The courtroom stenches of old wood and stale desperation. Marcus Chen stands at the defendant's table, his hands trembling as Judge Morrison reads the verdict that will destroy his life. Marcus Chen, you are hereby sentenced to 20 years in Blackwater Island Penitentiary for embezzlement and fraud. The words hit like physical blows. 20 years. Marcus's legs buckle, but the bailiff's grip keeps him upright. In the gallery, three men sit together, his best friends since college. David Zhang wears a perfectly tailored suit, his face a mask of manufactured sympathy. Next to him, Ryan Foster stares at the floor, unable to meet Marcus's eyes. And there's James Liu, Marcus's former business partner, shaking his head as if disappointed rather than guilty. They did this, all three of them. Your Honor, please. Marcus's voice cracks. I didn't do this. They set me up. David forged my signature on the accounts. Ryan destroyed the real documents. James testified against me with lies. Mr. Chen, you've had your opportunity to present your defense, Judge Morrison interrupts, her tone final. This court finds the evidence overwhelming. Bailiff, take him away. As the handcuffs click around his wrists, Marcus locks eyes with David. For just a moment, David's mask slips. A smile. Small, triumphant, cruel. Then it's gone, replaced by false sorrow for the cameras. I trusted you, Marcus whispers, though David can't hear him over the commotion. We were brothers. The truth settles into his bones as they drag him toward the door. David wanted Marcus's position at Chenlu Technologies. Ryan wanted Marcus's fiancée, Victoria. James wanted the company's patents for himself. Together, they'd orchestrated the perfect betrayal, framing Marcus for the very crimes they'd committed, using his trust as a weapon against him. Victoria sits in the back row, crying into Ryan's shoulder. She won't even look at Marcus. She'd already believed their lies, already moved on. The engagement ring he'd spent 3 months' salary on glints on her finger, but now it's meant for Ryan. As Marcus is led through the courthouse corridors, past reporters shouting questions and camera flashes that blind him, he makes a silent promise to himself. He will survive Blackwater. He will endure. And one day he will return to make them pay for every single moment of what they've stolen from him. Blackwater Island Penitentiary rises from the ocean like a tombstone, its walls black with decades of salt, spray, and neglect. The other prisoners call it the grave, a place where hope goes to die. Marcus learns quickly that survival requires becoming someone else, the gentle software engineer who once coded late into the night, who laughed at bad jokes and believed in the goodness of people, must disappear. In his place, a harder man emerges. The first week, a prisoner named Valdez tries to take Marcus's meal. Marcus fights back, earning a broken rib and Valdez's grudging respect. The second month, he stops a riot from reaching the library, the only place in Blackwater where he can still think clearly. The warden notices. Marcus gets assigned to the prison's accounting office, a small mercy that keeps him away from the worst violence. But the nights are brutal. In his cell, Marcus lies awake on the thin mattress, the sound of distant waves mocking him with their freedom. He replays that last board meeting over and over, how David had insisted Marcus sign the documents without reading them, claiming they were just as standard renewals, how James had distracted him with talk about their next product launch, how Ryan had assured him that Victoria was planning a surprise for their engagement party. All lies, carefully constructed lies. In the prison library, Marcus discovers old business journals, outdated newspapers, books on corporate strategy and financial manipulation. He reads everything, studying not just his industry, but theirs. David had moved into venture capital. Ryan had started a luxury real estate firm. James had taken Chenlu Technologies public, rebranding it simply as Lu-Tech. They divided his life among themselves like spoils of war. 3 years into his sentence, Marcus is shelving books in the library when an older prisoner approaches. Edmond Rousseau looks distinguished even in prison orange. Silver hair combed back, posture straight despite his 70 years, eyes sharp with intelligence that age hasn't dimmed. You're the one they framed, Edmond says without preamble. It's not a question. Marcus studies him warily. What's it to you? Because I recognize that look in your eyes. I had it once. Edmund pulls a worn photograph from his pocket, a beautiful estate on a cliff overlooking the Mediterranean. 25 years ago, my business partners betrayed me too. Sent me here with false testimony. By the time I got out, they'd sold everything I built. My company, my properties, my reputation. Then you know there's no point talking about it, Marcus says bitterly. Oh, but there is. Edmund's smile is knowing. Because unlike me, you still have time. And because I'm dying, which means I have information you need. They begin meeting in secret, during library hours or in the corner of the prison yard where the guard's attention wanders. Edmund tells Marcus about offshore accounts he'd hidden before his arrest. Money his betrayers never found because they didn't know it existed. Tens of millions of dollars untouched, growing with interest for 2.5 decades. I have no family left, Edmund explains one evening as the sun sets over the prison walls. No one to leave it to. But you have fire still burning. You have the intelligence to use it properly. Most importantly, you have worthy targets. Why me? Because you remind me of who I was. Because I failed to get my revenge, and I'll die with that regret. But you won't. Edmund leans closer. Promise me something, Marcus. When you get out, when you use what I'm giving you, make it count. Make them feel every moment of what they took from you. But don't let revenge consume you entirely. That's where I failed. Over the next 2 years, Edmund teaches Marcus everything. How to access the hidden accounts. How to create new identities that can't be traced. How to move through elite circles without drawing attention. How to identify people's weaknesses and exploit them with surgical precision. Revenge isn't about anger, Edmund says during one of their final conversations. His health is failing, his breathing labored. It's about patience. It's about understanding that the best vengeance is watching them destroy themselves, with just a gentle push from you at the right moments. When Edmund dies in his sleep, Marcus sits in his cell and weeps, not just for the old man, but for the part of himself that died with him. The last piece of Marcus Chen, the trusting friend and bright-eyed entrepreneur, disappears that night. In his place, someone colder and more dangerous takes shape. After 8 years of perfect behavior, exemplary work in the prison's business office, and no disciplinary infractions, Marcus becomes eligible for parole. His lawyer, a public defender who barely remembers his name, seems shocked when it's approved. Marcus doesn't tell him about the anonymous donation made to the parole board chairman's favorite charity, or the sealed letter that arrived at the governor's office detailing the chairman's gambling debts. Some things Edmund taught him required testing before he even left prison. On a cold March morning, Marcus walks through Blackwater's gates for the last time. He's 38 years old. 8 years of his life, gone. But Edmund's gift is waiting. The first stop is a small bank in the Cayman Islands, where Marcus accesses an account under Edmund's name. The balance makes him grip the desk, $47 million. The second account, in Switzerland, holds 32 million more. The third, fourth, and fifth accounts scattered across the globe bring the total to just over $200 million. Edmund had been far more successful than he'd admitted. Marcus sits in a luxury hotel room in Geneva, his first night of true freedom, and creates his new identity with meticulous care. Alexander Knight, British mother, American father, raised in Singapore and educated at Oxford. A private equity investor who'd made his fortune in Asian tech markets before relocating to the United States. Everything documented, verified, and impossible to trace back to Marcus Chen. He studies himself in the mirror. Prison has changed him physically. He's leaner, harder, with scars on his hands from fights and lines around his eyes from sleepless nights. His hair has started graying at the temples. Good. He looks nothing like the soft-faced 30-year-old who entered Blackwater. The transformation requires more than appearance. Alexander Knight needs a history, a presence, a reputation. Marcus spends 6 months building it. He makes strategic investments through shell companies, establishing a track record of success. He attends charity galas in London and Hong Kong, making himself visible to the right people. He grants an interview to the Financial Times about emerging markets, displaying expertise that turns heads in the investment community. When Alexander Knight finally arrives in San Francisco, he comes with credentials that open every door: a billion-dollar portfolio, connections to European nobility and Asian business dynasties, and an enigmatic personal story that makes him irresistibly interesting to the city's elite. Marcus, Alexander now, he must think of himself that way, rents a penthouse with views of the Bay Bridge and begins his reconnaissance. 8 years have changed his former friend's circumstances considerably. David Zhang's venture capital firm, Zhang Investments, controls over $3 billion in assets. He's married to Melissa Crawford, daughter of a senator, and they have twin daughters. David's LinkedIn profile shows speaking engagements, board positions, philanthropic work. He's become exactly what he always wanted: powerful, respected, untouchable, or so he thinks. Alexander discovers that Zhang Investments is heavily leveraged, with several high-risk positions in tech startups that are struggling. David's personal finances are stretched thin. The Presidio Heights mansion, the kids' private school tuition, Melissa's shopping habits, and a mistress in Palo Alto all drain his resources. He projects wealth while dancing on the edge of bankruptcy. Ryan Foster's luxury real estate empire, Foster Properties, dominates the high-end market. He married Victoria 3 months after Marcus's sentencing. They have a son, live in a Nob Hill mansion, and appear in San Francisco Magazine's most influential couples issue. Ryan's face, handsome, trustworthy, the face that swore eternal friendship before committing eternal betrayal, appears on billboards across the city. But Alexander's private investigator uncovers secrets. Ryan's been using client funds to cover personal expenses. Several property deals involve falsified appraisals. He's built his empire on fraud, just like he'd built his case against Marcus on lies. One push and the whole structure would collapse. James Liu took Chenlu Technologies public as Liu Tech, now valued at $12 billion. He's the golden child of Silicon Valley, featured on magazine covers, invited to TED Talks, praised as a visionary. The patents Marcus developed are now Liu Tech's core products, generating hundreds of millions in annual revenue. James is engaged to Sophie Chen, no relation to Marcus, but the coincidence stings. She's a renowned architect, beautiful and accomplished. Their wedding is scheduled for 6 months from now, a massive affair that will be covered by every society publication. Alexander notes that Liu Tech's success rests on those stolen patents. The company has few other innovations. James has been coasting on Marcus's genius for 8 years. Without those products, Liu Tech would be worth a fraction of its current value. Alexander makes his entrance at the tech industry's biggest annual gala, held at the Legion of Honor Museum. He arrives in a custom Tom Ford tuxedo, radiating quiet confidence and old money. His invitation came through his London connections, a tech baroness he'd helped with an investment in Singapore. David Zhang is holding court near the bar, surrounded by admirers. Alexander watches him from across the room, studying the gestures, the laugh, the way David touches people's arms to emphasize points. Still the same manipulator, just with better clothes. You're staring at David Zhang like you're planning his murder. Alexander turns to find a striking woman in a red dress beside him. She's around 40, with sharp eyes and an amused smile. Her name tag reads, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Mitchell Foundation. Is it that obvious? Alexander asks smoothly. Only to someone who's felt the same way. He rejected funding for my medical research foundation last year. Called it not commercially viable enough. Never mind that we're developing treatments for rare pediatric cancers. Sarah sips her champagne. So what's your story? Business rival? Something like that. Alexander Knight. He offers his hand. I know who you are. You made quite a splash in London's tech scene. What brings you to our little corner of the world? Unfinished business, Alexander says, his eyes returning to David. I'm a patient man, Dr. Mitchell, but I always close my accounts. Sarah follows his gaze and nods slowly. If you ever need someone who knows where all the bodies are buried in this city's tech scene, call me. Anyone who wants to take David Zhang down a peg has my full support. She hands him her card and disappears into the crowd. Alexander tucks it into his pocket, filing the contact away. In war, allies are valuable, even unexpected ones. An hour later, Alexander engineers an introduction through a mutual investor. David's handshake is firm, his smile practiced. Alexander Knight, what a pleasure. I've been following your work in Asia. Impressive returns. David's eyes assess, calculate, dismiss. He doesn't see a threat. He sees a potential tool. I'm looking to expand my portfolio in Silicon Valley, Alexander says, his British accent polished and perfect. Perhaps we could discuss opportunities. Absolutely. Let's schedule lunch. My secretary will reach out. David's attention already wandering to the next person, the next opportunity. Perfect. Let him see Alexander as just another wealthy investor, someone to exploit. Let him stay blind to the truth until it's far too late. As Alexander leaves the gala, he passes Ryan Foster arriving with Victoria on his arm. She's older now, her beauty tempered by something in her eyes. Sadness, perhaps, or regret. For a moment, Alexander feels a ghost of the pain he once felt at her betrayal. Then it's gone. Victoria made her choice. She chose wealth and comfort over truth and loyalty. She'll pay for that choice, along with the rest of them. Alexander's integration into San Francisco's elite circles proceeds with calculated precision. He joins the right clubs, donates to the right causes, and attends the right parties. Within 3 months, he's become a fixture in the same social sphere as David, Ryan, and James. The key is offering value while remaining mysterious. Alexander provides investment opportunities that actually pay off, building trust and credibility. He shares business intelligence that proves accurate. He makes himself indispensable while keeping his personal history vague enough to be intriguing. At a Pacific Heights dinner party, he finally meets Ryan Foster properly. Victoria is at Ryan's side, playing the perfect society wife, though Alexander notices the way she refills her wine glass a little too often. Alexander Knight, Ryan Foster. They shake hands. Ryan's grip is competitive, trying to establish dominance. Alexander lets him think he's won. Your property empire is impressive, Alexander says. I'm particularly interested in commercial developments. Perhaps we could discuss potential partnerships. Ryan's eyes light up. I'm always open to working with serious investors. You know, I started with almost nothing. Built everything through hard work and vision. The lie falls from Ryan's lips so smoothly, Alexander almost believes he believes it. But he sees the truth behind Ryan's words. This is a man who spent 8 years rewriting history, convincing himself he deserved Marcus's life because he took it. Victoria excuses herself, and Alexander notices her hands trembling slightly. Up close, he can see the cracks in her polished facade. The designer dress can't hide her thinness. The makeup can't quite cover the darkness under her eyes. Your wife seems unwell, Alexander observes to Ryan. Victoria's fine, just tired. Ryan's tone brooks no further discussion. So, about those commercial properties. Later, Alexander corners David at a venture capital conference. They're in the lounge area overlooking the city skyline, discussing a biotech startup that David's considering. The science is sound, Alexander says, reviewing the prospectus, but the leadership team is weak. They'll burn through funding in 18 months. David nods thoughtfully. You've got a sharp eye. Most people miss that. Where did you say you went to school? Oxford. You. Stanford. But that was another life. David's expression turns wistful, a carefully crafted performance. I lost my best friend around that time. Business partner. He made some bad choices, ended up in prison. It taught me to be more careful about who I trust. Alexander meets David's eyes. A painful lesson. The most painful. We were like brothers. I tried to help him, but he was too far gone. Some people can't be saved from themselves. The audacity of it steals Alexander's breath for a moment. David has rewritten history so thoroughly in his own mind that he actually believes he's the victim. He's transformed his betrayal into a tragedy where he was the wounded friend, the reluctant witness to Marcus's downfall. I had a similar experience once, Alexander lies smoothly. A partner who betrayed my trust. I learned that revenge is a dish best served cold. Revenge? David chuckles. I prefer to move forward. Living well is the best revenge, don't you think? Perhaps, Alexander says, though I find that those who betray others tend to meet unfortunate circumstances eventually. Karma, you might say. David's smile doesn't quite reach his eyes. For just a moment, Alexander sees uncertainty there. Good. Let the first seeds of doubt take root. The encounter with James happens at Lutech's headquarters, where Alexander has arranged a meeting to discuss potential investment. James's office overlooks the city, glass and steel and modern art, everything paid for with Marcus's innovations. James is smoother than the others, more controlled. He spent 8 years as the face of a tech company, learning to project confidence and vision even when neither exists. Mr. Knight, a pleasure. James gestures to the seating area, all leather and chrome. I've heard you're interested in our upcoming expansion into AI applications. I'm interested in understanding the foundation of Lutech's success, Alexander says, accepting a seat. Your core patents are impressive, elegant solutions to complex problems. Thank you. We've worked very hard to build this company. The we is casual, practiced. James has told the story so many times he's erased Marcus from it entirely. Who was the original architect of these systems? Alexander asks, feigning ignorance. The technical documentation suggests a single brilliant mind rather than a committee approach. James's smile tightens almost imperceptibly. We had several contributors in the early days. Tech development is always collaborative. Of course. Alexander lets it drop, but he's made his point. He's seen the flash of discomfort in James's eyes. Even 8 years later, James knows he's living in a house built by someone else's talent. They discuss potential investment terms, with Alexander asking questions that demonstrate deep technical knowledge. Knowledge James struggles to match without referring to his technical team. Alexander watches James deflect, dodge, redirect. The man is a skilled administrator and marketer, but he's not the genius he pretends to be. I'll need to review your IP portfolio in detail, Alexander says as the meeting concludes, particularly the original patent filings and development documentation. That's highly confidential material. For a $100 million investment, I require thorough due diligence. Alexander's tone is pleasant but firm. I'm sure you understand. James nods reluctantly. He wants Alexander's money too badly to refuse. Of course, I'll have my team prepare the materials. As Alexander leaves Lutech, he's already planning how to expose the truth hidden in those documents. The patents bear Marcus Chen's signature, Marcus Chen's work, Marcus Chen's genius. James has spent 8 years pretending otherwise, but the evidence remains. Alexander begins his campaign with subtle moves. A word here, a question there, carefully planted seeds of doubt. He mentions to influential people that Zhang Investments' portfolio seems overleveraged. He asks pointed questions about Foster Properties' appraisal methods. He expresses concern about Lutech's lack of innovation beyond its original patents. The whispers start slowly, barely noticeable at first. But in San Francisco's tight-knit tech elite, whispers have a way of growing louder. He also starts building his own network of allies, people who have reasons to dislike his targets. Dr. Sarah Mitchell introduces him to others who've been burned by David's ruthless investment tactics. A former Foster Properties employee contacts him after hearing he's interested in the company, offering to share stories of Ryan's fraud. A Lutech engineer, frustrated by James's taking credit for others' work, reaches out through a mutual contact. Alexander listens to all of them, learning their grievances, understanding their pain. He doesn't recruit them directly. Instead, he creates conditions where their own desires for justice align with his revenge. When the time comes, they'll act of their own accord, and he'll be nowhere near the smoking gun. One evening, Alexander encounters Victoria alone at a charity auction. Ryan is networking in another room. She's standing by a window, staring out at the city lights with a glass of wine in hand. Mrs. Foster, Alexander greets her. She turns, and up close, he sees the full extent of her unhappiness. Mr. Knight, are you enjoying the auction? More than you are, it seems. A bitter smile crosses her face. Is it that obvious? Only to someone paying attention. They stand in silence for a moment. Finally, Victoria speaks, her voice soft. Do you believe in second chances, Mr. Knight? in being able to undo our worst mistakes? I believe we pay for our choices, Alexander says carefully, but I also believe that sometimes the bill comes due in unexpected ways. I made a terrible mistake once, Victoria continues, as if she hasn't heard him. I believed lies about someone I loved. I chose security over truth, and I've paid for it every day since. She turns to look at him. Have you ever betrayed someone, Mr. Knight? No, Alexander says truthfully. But I've been betrayed. I understand both the victim and the perpetrator's perspective. What happened to the person who betrayed you? They haven't paid their debt yet. But they will. He sets his glass down on the windowsill. Mrs. Foster, may I offer some advice? Whatever mistake you made, there may still be time to make it right. But you have to be willing to face the truth, even when it destroys the life you've built on lies. Victoria's eyes fill with tears. What if the person I hurt is beyond my reach? What if I can never make it right? Then you live with that weight, but at least you can stop adding to it. Ryan's voice calls from across the room, and Victoria straightens, wiping her eyes quickly. The mask of the perfect wife slides back into place. But as she walks away, she glances back at Alexander, and he sees something there. Recognition, perhaps, or the beginning of understanding. Let her wonder. Let her question. Let the guilt eat at her just a little bit more each day. Alexander's attack on David begins with information. Through his network of contacts, he learns that Zhang Investments is one of 3 major investors in a tech startup called Quantum Dynamics. The company claims to have developed revolutionary quantum computing processors, and David has invested heavily, using his personal funds and taking on significant debt to maximize his position. The problem? Quantum Dynamics is a fraud. Alexander has had the technology independently verified by experts he trusts. The processors don't work as claimed. The company's CEO is a charismatic liar who's convinced investors through fabricated demos and falsified data. Alexander could expose this immediately, but that would be too quick. Instead, he invests in Quantum Dynamics himself, becoming one of the major shareholders. He attends board meetings, asks technical questions that make the CEO sweat, and subtly undermines confidence in the company's claims. Then he approaches David privately. I have concerns about Quantum Dynamics, Alexander says over drinks at the Pacific Club. The technology doesn't match their claims. I think we're looking at a Theranos situation. David's face goes pale. He's invested $12 million, money he borrowed against his personal assets. You're wrong. I've seen the demos. The tech is solid. The demos are staged. I've had independent verification done. David, this company is going to collapse, probably within 6 months. If you're as leveraged as I suspect, you need to start unwinding your position now. Why are you telling me this? David's suspicious, but also desperate. He can see the logic in Alexander's warnings. Professional courtesy. We're in the same circles. I don't want to see you destroyed by someone else's fraud. Alexander pauses. Unless you'd prefer to ignore the warning. No, I need to think. David's hands tremble slightly as he sets down his glass. If this is true, if Quantum Dynamics fails, your firm survives only if you act now. Quietly liquidate your position before the news breaks. I'll help where I can. But David, you're running out of time. Over the next month, Alexander watches David scramble. He tries to sell his Quantum Dynamics shares, but the market for them is thin. He takes on more debt trying to cover his positions. His wife Melissa discovers the financial crisis and, according to Alexander's sources, threatens divorce. David's carefully constructed life begins to crack. Then Alexander pulls the trigger. He provides the Wall Street Journal with documentation of Quantum Dynamics fraud, anonymously, of course. The article drops like a bomb. Quantum Dynamics stock becomes worthless overnight. The SEC launches an investigation. Investors lose hundreds of millions. David Zhang loses everything. Zhang Investments fails, unable to cover its debts. David's personal assets, the mansion, the cars, the art collection, go to creditors. His wife files for divorce, taking the kids and what little remains. His reputation is destroyed. He becomes a cautionary tale, the once golden venture capitalist brought down by his own greed and poor judgment. Alexander watches from a distance as David descends into the same kind of desperation Marcus once felt. The difference is that David deserves it. He built his success on stolen ground, and now that ground has given way beneath him. At a tech conference 3 months after David's collapse, Alexander encounters him in a hotel bar. David is drinking alone, his suit rumpled, his face haggard. He doesn't recognize Alexander at first. "David Zhang," Alexander says, taking the adjacent bar stool. David looks up with bleary eyes. "Knight, come to gloat?" "No, I came to offer you a chance at redemption." "What are you talking about?" "I know what you did to Marcus Chen." The name hangs in the air between them. David's face drains of color. "I don't know what—" "Don't lie, not now. You, Ryan, and James framed him. You stole his company, his work, his life. You destroyed him to advance yourselves." Alexander's voice is calm, almost gentle. "I've spent considerable resources investigating what really happened. I have documentation of the forged signatures, the falsified testimony, everything." "Why?" David whispers. "Why do you care about Marcus Chen?" "Because I believe in justice, and because I've seen what happens when betrayal goes unpunished. It corrupts everything around it." Alexander signals the bartender for 2 drinks. "I'm going to destroy Ryan and James too. They'll fall just like you have. But David, you have a choice. You can help me, tell the truth about what you did and find some measure of peace. Or you can protect them and live with the weight of your sins alone. If I tell the truth, I'll go to prison. I'll lose my daughters forever. Perhaps the authorities will be more lenient with someone who cooperates, who shows genuine remorse. Either way, David, you're already in a prison of your own making. The question is whether you want to stay there." David stares into his drink for a long moment. "Marcus was like a brother to me. We grew up together. I destroyed him because I was jealous, because I wanted what he had, because I was weak." Tears run down his face. "I've lived with it every day, every single day." "Then make it right. That's the only redemption available to you now." David nods slowly. "What do you need me to do?" With David's cooperation, Alexander gains access to detailed information about the conspiracy against Marcus. David provides documents, emails, recorded conversations, everything needed to prove the frame-up. But Alexander doesn't go to the authorities yet. That would be too quick, too clean. Ryan Foster needs to suffer first. He needs to feel the same panic, the same helplessness, the same desperation that Marcus felt. Alexander's attack on Ryan is more personal. He begins by exposing Foster Properties' fraudulent appraisal practices to the California Real Estate Commission. Anonymous tips, backed by documentation that David provides, trigger investigations into several of Ryan's most prominent deals. Then Alexander targets Ryan's marriage. Through discreet inquiries, Alexander learns that Victoria has been seeing a therapist, struggling with depression and guilt. The therapist has encouraged her to confront the truth about her past choices. Victoria has started asking questions about Marcus Chen's case, requesting copies of trial transcripts, visiting the courthouse to review public records. She's beginning to realize the truth. Alexander arranges an accidental encounter at a coffee shop. Victoria's alone, reading through documents at a corner table. Alexander recognizes them, trial transcripts from Marcus's case. "Mrs. Foster," he greets her. She looks up, startled. "Mr. Knight, I didn't expect to see you here." "I'm meeting a client nearby. May I?" He gestures to the empty chair. "Of course." They sit in silence for a moment. Alexander glances at the documents. "Heavy reading." Victoria's hands tremble. "I'm looking into an old case. Someone I knew was convicted of fraud. I always believed he was guilty, but now I'm not so sure." "What changed your mind?" "Little things. Inconsistencies in the testimony. Questions that were never asked. And—" She pauses, struggling with the words. "The fact that I knew him, really knew him. Marcus wasn't capable of what they said he did. He was honest, sometimes to a fault. He believed in doing the right thing even when it cost him." "Marcus," Alexander's tone is carefully neutral. "Marcus Chen. He was my fiancé, before Ryan." Victoria's eyes fill with tears. Ryan told me Marcus was guilty, that the evidence was overwhelming. Ryan said Marcus had been lying to everyone, that he'd betrayed all his friends. And I believed him. God help me, I believed him. What if you were right to believe him? What if Marcus was guilty? Then why is Ryan so nervous lately? Why does he panic when I mention Marcus's name? Why did David Zhang visit our house last week, drunk and rambling about guilt and revenge and paying for sins? Victoria looks directly at Alexander. Mr. Knight, I think my husband framed Marcus Chen. I think he destroyed an innocent man to steal his company and his fiancée. And I helped him do it by believing his lies. That's a serious accusation. I know, and I don't have proof, not yet, but I'm going to find it. And when I do, she wipes her eyes. I'm going to make it right, even if it costs me everything. Alexander reaches into his jacket and removes an envelope. Inside are copies of emails between Ryan, David, and James, messages from 8 years ago, discussing their plan to frame Marcus. David had kept them all these years, perhaps as insurance, perhaps as penance. You might find these useful, Alexander says, placing the envelope on the table. Victoria's hand trembles as she reaches for it. Where did you get these? Let's say someone with a guilty conscience wanted the truth to come out. Read them, Mrs. Foster, then decide what you're going to do. He leaves her there, knowing that the documents will destroy what remains of her marriage. But unlike Ryan's betrayal of Marcus, this truth serves justice. Victoria deserves to know she married a monster. 3 days later, Victoria Foster files for divorce and contacts the district attorney's office. She provides testimony about Ryan's admission of fraud, drunk confessions over the years that she dismissed as guilty rambling. Combined with the documents Alexander provided through David, the evidence triggers an investigation. Ryan's world collapses faster than David's. The real estate fraud investigations lead to criminal charges. His clients sue for damages. His business partners distance themselves. Foster Properties declares bankruptcy within 2 months. But Alexander isn't finished. Ryan had taken more than Marcus's company. He'd taken his fiancée, his dignity, his freedom. For that, the punishment must be personal. Through careful manipulation and strategic timing, Alexander ensures that Ryan faces trial for both the real estate fraud and his role in framing Marcus. The courtroom where Ryan is arraigned is the same one where Marcus was sentenced 8 years ago. Even the same judge presides. Alexander attends the hearing, sitting in the gallery where David, Ryan, and James once sat. He watches Ryan stand at the defendant's table, handcuffed and desperate, just as Marcus once stood. The irony is beautiful. When Ryan is let out, he sees Alexander in the crowd. For just a moment, their eyes meet. Recognition doesn't come. How could it? Alexander Knight looks nothing like Marcus Chen, but something in Alexander's expression must register, because Ryan flinches as if struck. James Liu proves the most challenging target. He's insulated by success, protected by Liu Tech's legal team and public relations machine. He's the golden child, the visionary, the innovator. Taking him down requires not just exposing his theft, but destroying the very foundation of his identity. Alexander begins by purchasing shares of Liu Tech through various shell companies, quietly accumulating a significant position. He times his moves carefully, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment comes when James announces Liu Tech's biggest product launch yet, a revolutionary AI system that James claims will transform the industry. The press conference is scheduled for 3 weeks, with James positioned as the genius architect behind the innovation. Alexander attends the pre-launch investor meeting, where James presents the technical specifications. As James speaks, describing algorithms and system architecture, Alexander recognizes every single element. They're variations on Marcus Chen's original work, the patents James stole 8 years ago, slightly modified and repackaged. Fascinating, Alexander interrupts during the Q&A session. The neural network architecture you've described, it's remarkably similar to the foundational work in your original patents from 2017. Could you explain how you evolved from those initial concepts? James's smile doesn't waver. Of course. We've spent years refining and improving. Specifically, could you walk us through the decision to use recursive learning loops instead of traditional feedback mechanisms? That was quite innovative for its time. Well, the recursive approach allowed for James fumbles, reaching for technical language that sounds impressive but says nothing. Alexander presses harder, asking increasingly specific questions about implementation details, design choices, mathematical proofs. James deflects, defers to his technical team, and gradually loses control of the room. The investors sense uncertainty. Doubt creeps in. After the meeting, Alexander approaches James privately in the hallway. "You didn't design any of it, did you?" Alexander says quietly. "Not the original patents, not this new system. You've been coasting on someone else's genius for 8 years." James's mask slips. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who knows the truth. Someone who has the original design documents, signed and dated by their real creator. Someone who's about to make your life very complicated. If you're trying to blackmail me, I'm not trying to do anything. I'm simply going to reveal the truth. Marcus Chen created everything Lutech is built on. You stole his work, framed him for crimes you committed, and sent him to prison while you profited from his brilliance." Alexander steps closer. "And now the world is going to know." James's face hardens. "You have no proof. Marcus Chen was convicted of fraud. He's a criminal. No one will believe him over me." "They won't have to believe him. They'll believe the documentation, the original code repositories with Marcus's username and timestamps, the design documents in his handwriting, the emails between you, David, and Ryan discussing how to steal his patents and frame him for the embezzlement you committed." Alexander smiles coldly. "David's already cooperating with authorities. Ryan's facing charges. You're the last one standing, James. But not for long. David would never... David lost everything. Ryan's going to prison. They have nothing left to protect and everything to gain by telling the truth. You're alone now, James. Just like you left Marcus alone 8 years ago." James's phone buzzes. He glances at it, and Alexander sees his face go pale. It's a news alert. The Wall Street Journal has just published an expose on Lutech, questioning the true authorship of its core patents. The article cites anonymous sources and references documentation that suggests James Liu may have stolen the intellectual property from his former partner, Marcus Chen. "How did you..." James starts. "I'm very thorough, and I've been planning this for a long time." Alexander turns to leave, then pauses. "Oh, and James? Your wedding to Sophie is in 2 weeks, isn't it? You might want to tell her the truth before she reads about it in the press. She deserves to know she's marrying a fraud and a felon." Liutech's stock plummets 40% in 2 days. The SEC launches an investigation into the company's IP claims. Tech journalists who once praised James as a visionary now write scathing pieces about his deception. His TED Talk is removed from the platform. Board members resign. Sophie Chen cancels the wedding after reading the expose. In a statement to the press, she says, "I cannot marry someone who built his success on lies and destroyed an innocent man's life. I thought I knew James Liu. I was wrong." The technical team at Lutech, freed from James's intimidation, begins speaking to reporters. They confirm what Alexander has been saying. James never understood the technology he claimed to have invented. He was a business mind, a marketer, but not the genius creator of Lutech's innovations. Marcus Chen's name appears in headlines for the first time in 8 years, but now as a victim rather than a criminal. Legal experts on cable news discuss the possibility of overturning his conviction. Civil rights advocates call for an investigation into how the justice system failed him. Alexander watches it all unfold from his penthouse, drinking scotch and feeling hollow. This is what he wanted. David is bankrupt and broken. Ryan is facing 20 years in prison. James is exposed as a fraud, his company collapsing, his reputation destroyed. The 3 men who stole Marcus Chen's life have paid the price. So why doesn't it feel like enough? Alexander stands in front of Blackwater Island Penitentiary, the place that shaped him into Alexander Knight and destroyed Marcus Chen. He hasn't been back since the day he walked out 8 years ago. Edmund had been right about everything except one thing. Revenge doesn't heal the wound. It just creates new ones. Mr. Knight, Alexander turns to find Victoria standing behind him. She looks different, thinner, older, but somehow lighter, as if a weight has been lifted. She's dressed simply, without the designer clothes and jewelry she wore as Ryan Foster's wife. Mrs. Foster, I'm surprised to see you here. I'm not Mrs. Foster anymore. The divorce is final. She joins him, looking up at the prison walls. I came to see if they'd let me visit Marcus. I wanted to apologize, even though I know it won't change anything. But they told me he was released years ago. He was. 8 years ago. Do you know where he is? I've tried to find him, but it's like he disappeared. Alexander is silent for a long moment, staring at the prison that tried to break him. Finally, he speaks, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus Chen died in that prison, Victoria. The man who loved you, who trusted his friends, who believed in fairness and justice. He didn't survive Blackwater. Victoria's eyes fill with tears. I'm so sorry. I should have believed in him. I should have fought for him. Instead, I married the man who destroyed him. Yes, you should have. Alexander's voice is hard. But you were weak. And that weakness cost an innocent man 8 years of his life. I know, I'll live with that guilt forever. She wipes her eyes. I'm testifying at Ryan's trial. I'm telling everything I know about what they did. I can't undo my mistakes, but I can at least try to make sure Marcus's name is cleared. His name being cleared won't give him back those years. It won't restore what was taken from him. I know, but it's all I can offer. Victoria turns to look at him directly. Mr. Knight, why do you care so much about Marcus Chen? You've orchestrated the downfall of 3 powerful men to avenge someone you've never met. Why? Alexander meets her gaze, and for a moment, he considers telling her the truth. But what would be the point? Marcus Chen is dead. Alexander Knight is who remains. Because someone needed to, he says finally. Because justice delayed is justice denied. Because those who wrong others should face consequences. Thank you, Victoria whispers. Wherever Marcus is, I hope he knows someone fought for him. I hope he's found some kind of peace. She walks away, leaving Alexander alone with the ghosts of his past. Marcus Chen's conviction is overturned 6 months later. The exoneration hearing is packed with reporters, legal observers, and supporters who followed the case. David Zhang testifies about the conspiracy, his voice hollow as he details how they forged documents, falsified evidence, and destroyed their best friend for personal gain. Ryan Foster, already facing his own trial, confirms David's testimony in exchange for a slightly reduced sentence. James Liu, cornered by overwhelming evidence, admits his role in the intellectual property theft, though he continues to minimize his involvement in the frame-up. The judge who originally sentenced Marcus has retired, but Judge Morrison's replacement, Judge Catherine Walsh, reads the exoneration with barely concealed fury. Marcus Chen spent 8 years in prison for crimes he did not commit. 8 years stolen by men he trusted, men he called friends. This court finds that a grave miscarriage of justice occurred, orchestrated through deliberate fraud and perjury. Mr. Chen's conviction is hereby vacated and his record is expunged. The courtroom erupts in applause. Legal advocates hug each other. Reporters rush to file their stories. It's a victory for justice, a feel-good story about the system finally getting it right. But Alexander Knight, sitting in the back row, feels only emptiness. Marcus Chen has been declared innocent, but Marcus Chen doesn't exist anymore. The exoneration is for a ghost. After the hearing, Alexander walks through the city he once called home, past the apartment where he lived as Marcus Chen, now occupied by strangers, past the office building where Chen Liu Technologies once operated, now housing a different tech startup, past the restaurant where he proposed to Victoria, now closed and boarded up. Everything has changed. Everyone has moved on, except him. Alexander finds himself at the Mitchell Foundation headquarters, though he's not entirely sure why. Dr. Sarah Mitchell welcomes him into her office with the same sharp intelligence and directness he remembers from their first meeting. Alexander Knight, or should I say Marcus Chen, he freezes. How long have you known? Since our second conversation. You look different, but you have the same tells when you talk about betrayal, the same anger, carefully controlled. and you knew far too much about David Zhang's business practices for someone who just arrived in San Francisco. Sarah gestures to a chair. Sit down. You look like you need to. Alexander Marcus sits heavily. If you knew, why didn't you say anything? Because you were doing something I couldn't do, taking down men who deserved it. David Zhang destroyed my foundation's funding because we wouldn't cut corners on our research. He cost sick children their chance at treatment. I'm not sorry to see him fall. Sarah pours 2 glasses of water. But now the revenge is complete, and you look more lost than satisfied. That's why I wanted to talk. I got what I wanted. They're all destroyed. Justice was served. Was it? David is bankrupt but alive. Ryan will serve time but eventually be released. James's reputation is ruined, but he's not in prison. Meanwhile, you've spent 8 years of freedom still living as a prisoner, imprisoned by your need for revenge, by your identity as Alexander Knight, by your inability to move forward. What would you have me do? Forgive them? Pretend it never happened? No. I'd have you recognize that revenge is a means, not an end. You've successfully destroyed your enemies, but you've also destroyed yourself in the process. Marcus Chen died in Blackwater, you said, but he doesn't have to stay dead. I can't go back to being who I was. No one's asking you to, but you can choose who you become next. You have $200 million, a proven ability to navigate elite circles, and a unique understanding of both justice and injustice. You could spend the rest of your life obsessing over the past, or you could use your resources and experience to prevent what happened to you from happening to others. Marcus is silent, processing her words. The Mitchell Foundation is expanding, Sarah continues. We're not just doing medical research anymore. We're working with innocence projects, funding legal defense for those who can't afford it, supporting reform of the criminal justice system. We could use someone with your skills and resources, someone who understands what it means to be failed by the system. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a purpose beyond revenge, a way to honor what you survived by helping others survive it too. Sarah leans forward. Marcus, you won. Your name is cleared. Your enemies are defeated. But winning isn't the same as healing. At some point, you have to decide, are you going to spend the rest of your life as Alexander Knight, the instrument of revenge? Or are you going to reclaim Marcus Chen and build something meaningful from the rubble? Marcus stands in his penthouse that night, looking out at the San Francisco skyline. His phone shows news alerts. Ryan Foster sentenced to 15 years. James Liu facing civil suits totaling billions. David Zhang spotted working as a manager at a corporate chain, trying to rebuild his life from nothing. They've paid. The debt is settled. Edmund's voice echoes in his memory. Don't let revenge consume you entirely. That's where I failed. Edmund died alone in prison, his revenge incomplete, his life defined by bitterness and loss. He'd given Marcus the tools for revenge, but also a warning. Winning the war doesn't mean anything if you lose yourself in the process. Marcus picks up his phone and makes a call. Dr. Mitchell, it's Marcus. Marcus Chen. Saying his real name aloud feels strange after 8 years. I've thought about your offer. I want to discuss how I can help. I'm glad to hear it. When can you start? Soon, but first there's something I need to do. Marcus returns to Blackwater Island Penitentiary one final time. This time, he's not here to stare at the walls that imprisoned him. He's here to meet with the warden about a proposal. Mr. Chen, I'm not sure I understand what you're proposing, Warden Thompson says, reviewing the documents Marcus has provided. A comprehensive reform program, computer training for inmates, legitimate business education, partnerships with tech companies willing to hire ex-convicts. I'm prepared to fund it entirely. $10 million over 5 years to start. Marcus looks around the warden's office, remembering his own time in this building. I know what it's like to be in here, Warden. I know how hard it is to survive, let alone prepare for life after release. Most of these men will get out someday. They should have a chance to become something other than what sent them here. This is remarkably generous, especially considering your experience here. It's not generosity, it's investment. In people, in second chances, in the idea that we're more than our worst moments. Marcus stands, extending his hand. I spent 8 years here for crimes I didn't commit. I can't get that time back. But I can make sure the time others spend here isn't completely wasted. The warden shakes his hand. We'll make it work, Mr. Chen. Thank you. As Marcus leaves Blackwater for what he promises himself will be the last time, he feels something shift inside him. The weight that's pressed on his chest for 8 years, the anger, the bitterness, the consuming need for revenge, lightens just slightly. Edmund was right and wrong. Revenge was necessary. The men who destroyed him needed to face consequences. But revenge alone couldn't heal the wounds. That requires something else. Purpose, meaning, the choice to build rather than just destroy. Marcus stands in the Mitchell Foundation's new office, watching as lawyers meet with clients who've been wrongfully accused. The foundation has expanded significantly with his funding and leadership. They've taken on 12 cases so far, winning exoneration for 3 people already. Marcus, the Johnson case just called, Sarah says, entering his office. The DA agreed to review the evidence. I think we're going to get him out. That's good news. Marcus reviews the file. Darren Johnson, convicted of armed robbery on questionable eyewitness testimony, 7 years into a 20-year sentence. His case reminds Marcus of his own, a system too quick to convict, too slow to question, too proud to admit mistakes. Also, you have a visitor. She says she's an old friend. Victoria enters hesitantly. She looks healthier than the last time Marcus saw her, with color in her cheeks and clarity in her eyes. She's dressed professionally, working clothes, not society wife fashion. Marcus, she says softly, thank you for seeing me. Victoria, he doesn't invite her to sit. What do you want? To apologize properly. To say that I've spent the last year trying to understand how I could have been so blind, so weak, so willing to believe lies about someone I claim to love. Tears fill her eyes. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry and that I'm trying to be better than I was. Are you? Marcus asks. It's not hostile. It's genuine curiosity. I'm working with the Innocence Project now, using my experience, what I learned from failing you, to help families of the wrongfully convicted. It's not enough. Nothing can be enough. But it's what I can do. Marcus studies her for a long moment. The woman who betrayed him is gone, replaced by someone who's faced her own failures and chosen to do better. It doesn't undo the past. It doesn't heal all wounds, but it's something. I'm not ready to forgive you, Victoria. I may never be. What you did, choosing to believe Ryan's lies instead of trusting the man you claim to love, that cost me 8 years. No apology can give me that time back. I know. But, Marcus continues, I think Edmund would tell me that holding on to bitterness only imprisons me further. So I'm making a choice. I'm choosing to let you be someone new, just as I'm trying to be someone new. Not Marcus Chen, who was betrayed. Not Alexander Knight, who sought revenge. Just Marcus, someone who survived and decided to build something meaningful from the experience. Thank you, Victoria whispers. That's more grace than I deserve. Probably. But maybe grace isn't about deserving. Maybe it's about choosing to move forward instead of staying trapped in the past. Victoria nods and turns to leave. At the door, she pauses. Marcus, I'm glad you survived. I'm glad you won. And I'm glad you chose to be more than just your revenge. After she leaves, Marcus returns to his desk and the stack of case files waiting for him. Each one represents someone trapped in the system, someone failed by justice, someone who needs an advocate. His phone buzzes with a message from Sarah. Board meeting at 3. We're voting on expanding to public defender services. Your input needed. Marcus Chen, prisoner 847392 at Blackwater Island Penitentiary, spent 8 years in hell for crimes he didn't commit. Alexander Knight, billionaire phantom, spent months dismantling the lives of those who put him there. But Marcus Chen, director of the Mitchell Foundation's Justice Initiative, is spending his future ensuring others don't suffer the same fate. Revenge was necessary. Justice was served. But purpose, that's what makes survival worth it. As Marcus gathers his materials for the board meeting, He glances at the photo on his desk. It's from the Blackwater Reform Program's first graduation ceremony. 15 men who completed the computer training program, who now have jobs waiting for them on the outside, who have a chance to build new lives. Edmund smiles from his own frame on the corner of the desk, a photo Marcus found in the prison's records. The old man who gave him the means for revenge, but also warned him not to let it consume him entirely. I listened, Edmund, Marcus says quietly to the photograph. I got my revenge, but I didn't let it be all of me. I hope that's enough. Outside his window, San Francisco glitters in the afternoon sun. The city where Marcus Chen was betrayed, destroyed, and reborn. The city where 3 men paid for their sins. The city where 1 man learned that surviving isn't enough. You have to choose what you survive for. Marcus picks up his phone and makes another donation to the Blackwater Reform Program, then another to the Innocence Project, then another to legal aid services for the indigent. The money Edmund left him, blood money, revenge money, second chance money, flows out into the world, transforming from the instrument of vengeance into the foundation of justice. It doesn't erase the past. Nothing can. But it builds a future where fewer people will have to endure what Marcus Chen endured. And that, Marcus finally understands, is the only revenge that truly matters. Not destroying your enemies, but ensuring they can't create more victims. The board meeting awaits. The case files demand attention. The work of justice is never finished. But for the first time in 8 years, Marcus Chen feels something other than anger or emptiness. He feels purpose. He feels peace. He feels free. Have you ever wondered what you would do if everything was taken from you? If those you trusted most betrayed you in the deepest way? Marcus Chen's story reminds us that revenge, while sometimes necessary, is hollow without purpose. True justice isn't just about making others pay. It's about ensuring their crimes don't create more victims. Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more stories about redemption, justice, and the strength it takes to choose building over destruction.